Here's the thing, you can nail your exposure, nail your colors, and your photos can still look flat. Because the thing that actually gives a photo its final tone, its mood, its punch, isn't in the sliders. It's the tone curve. You see, I've taught Lightroom to photographers worldwide for over 10 years, and today I'm pulling back the curtains on my entire tone curve process. I'm talking every secret, every step, and the exact workflow I use to get perfect tones every time. There is one thing that confuses almost everyone in Lightroom. And once you get this, your edits are going to look much cleaner. And I'm of course talking about the difference between the basic panel and the tone curve. At first glance, they look like they're doing the exact same thing. Shadows, highlights, blacks, whites, and both panels have sliders for all of it. While one of course has, these curves, but you get the idea. So what happens is that most people just bounce between the two, pulling whichever slider feels right at the moment. But here's the thing, they actually work completely differently under the hood. And I learned this from a photographer named Garrett Needham, and it genuinely changed the way how I edit. And if you're watching this, Garrett, thank you. Now, here's the simplest way I can put it. The basic panel, it is smart, and the tone curve, it's not. Now, what I mean by this is that when you move a slider in the basic panel, Lightroom is doing a bunch of work behind the scenes to protect your entire image. And it's trying to hold on to the detail in your highlights and in your shadows, and it's trying to stop things from clipping. The thing is, it's actually capable of pulling back details you thought were already gone. And that's why the basic panel is the right tool for recovering your exposure and rescuing details. Now, the tone curve, on the other hand, it doesn't do any of that. It has zero protection built in. All it does is it takes your tones and it bends it in relationship between them. Basically, you're not recovering anything, you are reshaping the contrast, which makes it a better tool for giving your image its final look and its mood. And of course, its punch as well. But the wrong tool to reach for if you're trying to fix the exposure problems or you're trying to rescuing the blown highlights. I'll show you in a second. It is absolutely impossible to use it for that. So here's how I actually use them together. And I kind of think of them as layers. Layer 1, the basic panel, and then the layer 2 is the tone curve. So how this works in practice is that I start with the basic panel. That's where I fix my exposure, recover the details that I can, and basically just get the image to a good and honest place. Then, only once I've done that, I go down to the tone curve for the second layer, so to speak. And that's purely used to shape the contrast and give the image its final look. My friend, let's jump into Lightroom and let me show you why this order actually matters. All right, my friend, so welcome to Lightroom. Let me now demonstrate this in action so you can really grasp the idea of this. So first, let's do a regular, we save the photo. We correct the photo, do some basic correction here, up with the shadows, we can take up the whites ever so slightly and down with the blacks a little bit. So now we corrected the photo, looks pretty decent. And we go down to the tone curve and we shape it with a little bit of contrast. We do it really, really basic. A slight S curve, something like this. It looks pretty rich, looks pretty decent, not too bad. A pretty decent photo. Now here we do the same thing, but the other way around. We are gonna try to correct the image with the tone curves and then put the contrast with the basic correction. So we can do something like this. I'm taking down the highlights, taking up the shadows, and already you can start to see just we are starting to breaking the photo quite heavily just right away. So if I zoom in, you can see how the skin just get affected. This is a little bit too much zoomed in for you, my friend, but here, and it just does not look, we can even have 100, I think it's better. So here, it just looks really, really strange. And then if we start to put we add some contrast, we take up the highlights, we take now down the shadows, down the blacks with the whites, and this just looks so poor compared to this. Much richer, and this does not look good at all. And we could try to be like, okay, but we're losing a lot of colors, let's add some saturation, and it still looks strange. And you can see here I did another photo, very basic, just basic correction here, corrected it with the basic panel, went down to the tone curve and added a tiny S curve. And then here I did the exact opposite, and you can just see that it was so harder to retrieve any information with the tone curves, and this just looks so there's huge difference. So my friend, this is why I use the basic panel to both rescue your photos, but more importantly, you don't want to rescue, you want to give it that base contrast and the base exposure, so it just corrected so it looks really good, and then you go down to the tone curves to shape the contrast and really give it that oomph. Which leads us to what is the best practices when using the tone curve. All right, so when you're working with the tone curve, and I'm just assuming that you have basic understanding of how this works, just in case if you just don't have any information or knowledge about tone curve and just happen to stumble upon this video somehow, then the tone curve is a really cool tool in order for you to manipulate the tones and contrast in a really precise way. So down here you have the blacks, the darkest parts of photos. Here you have the whites, the brightest parts of photos, and then you have the highlights, midtones, and shadows. And the cool thing is you can place these tones, and if you move it above this line here, you make this, or notes I should say, not tones, so you take these little notes here, move it above the line, you make it brighter, below the line, and make it darker. And then the beautiful thing is that we can get so precise, we can add as many notes as we like, and we can just start to manipulate the tone curve in any way that we like. Now the most common way to do is the simple S curve. Everybody and their grandmother has heard it. It's basically put 2 or 3 notes like this, and then you take down the shadows and you take up the highlights, and this basically stretches out the image, giving it this beautiful contrast. Now the thing with the tone curve is that no image is going to have 100% exactly the same tone curve. And one of my favorite ways to think about this is that I'm massaging the tone curve. So first and foremost, if you hold in Alt on your keyboard, the tone curve moves really slow. That is such a clutch trick, because without it, it can be really fast, and small changes in the tone curve have huge effects. So you want to be precise. And by holding in Alt, you are allowing yourself, oops, there I made another one, to get precise. And if you double tap, you take away the nodes, all right? Another thing that is good to keep in mind when working with your tone curves is to go up here and just take a look at the histogram. And this is good to take a look at throughout the edit at all. Just, are you clipping anywhere? If these little triangles light up, you are clipping. Now, sometimes I think it's okay to be a little bit too bright or a little bit too dark. You don't have to always aim for it to be perfectly, like no light up here. It's just part of the creative process. But it's good to keep in mind to not go overly clipped, like here where you can see it's just like, okay, this photo clearly quite overexposed, you know? So what I'm doing, if we go back here and where it was like here, I'm just seeing how far can I take it, and both on the histogram and with my eyes. And then sometimes I see like, okay, we have a scenario where this photo is a little bit too bright. We have a few spots up here in the sky where a little bit too bright. So here I could brighten up these parts here, and you can see how they are. They aren't that bright. The midtones aren't bright. This is the histogram 2. This is exact representation of the tones that we're working with. So if I go like, okay, the midtones, they're quite dull. Let's take them up. I can isolate them from here where it goes down, up like this, but we don't want the brightest parts to clip like this. And then it's just make sure to go as far as we can until this triangle up here starts to light up. And that could be somewhere around here. That is something that you can do as well. Now, if you like it to be a little bit higher, then what you can do, you can always soften the whites. This just makes sure that the whites aren't pure whites, and you get this beautiful roll-off effect to the highlights. And I think this, yeah, I often have it a little bit here. Same goes for the shadows. Now, I am also just taking a look at the photo and seeing, okay, it is a little bit too dark in this area right here. Here you have an, like, what can you say? Here you have a decision to make. You could take up the shadows ever so slightly and get slight fade to them. Very pretty. Like this look a lot, and you're not dealing with any clipped shadows there. Or you could just move them up ever so slightly. But it's really hard here because we're working with the true blacks. So in this scenario, we kind of have to accept that there are a few parts that are super dark, which is totally okay. It's just these darkest shadow parts here. Or we can move it up ever so slightly, and then we can start manipulating the contrast in the shadow areas a bit more. And again, it's just about massaging it, putting a few tones, taking it a little bit down, using your eyes, looking at it. It's like, is this looking good, or am I going too far? What is the histogram telling me? Okay, this looks pretty damn good. Now, another slider that is so good to know as well is this refined saturation slider. This didn't exist a while ago. I'm getting a little bit old. This has existed for a little while, but once upon a time, my friend, this didn't exist. And when they added it, I was just like, wow, thank you, Lightroom overlords, for creating this. This slider is so cool. So when you're working with, let's make a massive contrast here, just for the sake of the tutorial. So I'm gonna exaggerate the contrast, do it not more than what I would usually. Now this is overly contrasty, but what it does is that it makes this photo it drags up the saturation as well. So contrast and saturation, they work often really like in hand. And sometimes you want that oomphy contrast, but you don't want that crazy color saturation that it gets at the same time. So what you do then, you go down to the refine saturation slider and you just play with this. This is so subtle, but take a look at the intensity of the color of the orange colors here and the intensity of the greens. I take it all the way down. And can you see the difference? Here is with it, without. It's super subtle, but just take a look at the intensity of the reds. Now they're poppy, now they're duller. This is a beautiful, beautiful slider to keep in mind. Now, another cool little thing to know about when you're using the tone curve is this little area right here, or this little thing. I'm, of course, using this tone curve, the point tone curve. You can use this one if you want to. It just does not allow you to put any points. I think this is much, much better. Sometimes I use them in combination, but often I just go like this. This is good. This is good for me. I don't need all the things Lightroom does, like enables me to do, but this little point thing here is pretty nice. So you can take it, and when you hover over, you see, like, take a look at the tone curve. So I'm going to remove a few nodes here so you can just really see. We have this simple one here. I click it, and wherever it moves, it shows you now where these tones sit on the tone curve. And if we go to the brighter, you can see where it sits here, and we can find the mid-tones. They're here somewhere. Isn't this like fabulous? And then you can either just start to scroll on your mouse like this, and it already puts it and takes it up or down, which is a pretty cool and intuitive way to work with. And then you can go up here and go like, I want to take this up a little bit. But keep in mind that with tone curve, if you move up one area, it is a curve. So it's going to take, you move up here, and it's going to take down on the other one, the other side. So if you take it up here, you see what happens to this side. So it is really important, because it's all connected, that you massage it and just take small steps at a time. Now, this is all cool, but what about these curves, the RGB curves? These are pretty daunting and scary. Well, let's jump into them as well. So the RGB curves, and we can probably use, should we use this photo for this? They are a really cool tool that allows us to control the color contrast in a really fun and a precise way. And the thing is, whether you want to warm up your highlights, add cool tones to your shadows, or create a cinematic color separation, this tool gives you that full control. But there is this one problem I personally have. This is a personal grudge I have with the tone color curves, and the reason I don't use them all the time. And I'll dive into that in a second. First, let me show you how this works. So basically, same as with the tone curves, now you just have the colors as well, and you have the red, green, and blue. And just as before, if you want to make the image a little bit cooler, you can click here and we just drag it up on the blue, and the entire color photo becomes bluer. If you want to make it more yellow, a little bit warmer, you take it down like this. And with like how every curve works, we can isolate parts. You want to isolate the highlights, make the highlights of this photo a little bit warmer. We can isolate it like this, and we can start to push in warm tones. You see how the highlights becomes yellower and more warm. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you could make them warm as well, and just the entire thing, but maybe you want to create color contrast. So we then make the shadows bluer to combat it. Now here, in my opinion, you have to be pretty careful. Small changes here can completely mess up the photo, but it can be really, really, really fun and really rewarding to find such a cool color combination and a way to manipulate the colors that is quite hard otherwise. But I still have a little grudge here. I'll dive into that in a second. And by the way, if this kind of thinking is connecting to you and you want to learn more about how to edit your photos in Lightroom, then check out my full Lightroom masterclass. This is over 10 years of editing experience packed into one simple step-by-step course. Over 700 people have taken this course at the time of the recording. The feedback I've gotten is just mind-blowing to me. It's just so fantastic to see how people, like how you guys are leveling up with the things that are happening inside my head. And seeing you guys get better, it's just so rewarding. If you're interested, then you can find more information about this course in the description down below. It will take your editing skill and just like... That's a promise. Now with the color curves, if you go here, I think here I use them actually on this photo. This is a little, just very, very, very subtly. So if, for example, again, we wanted to cool down or like, not cool down, the brighten, warm up the shadows. I'm so tired. Warm up the highlights. We would do it like this and then up here, just like I did on the other one. And then maybe we wanted to also make them a little bit redder, and we can do it like this and then add a little teal. But you can get really, really precise. I was working on this photo, and I think this is a pretty cool example where we could add a little retro look, make the highlights a little bit warmer, cool the shadows a little bit. We could go up here and then take down the up with the reds ever so slightly. And this also here, we're taking away a little bit of the contrast, but here we can add up a tiny bit of the contrast as well, because keep in mind, you are doing the colors and the tones at the same time. And that is really one of the things that I find a little bit tedious about the tone curves, because when you're working with the RGB curves, the problem I have is that you're also adding in exposure and contrast adjustments at the same time rather than just colors. And with the point color curves here, you don't really have this problem. So what I usually like to do, or my workflow really, is to get the tones right here, add some crazy good like exposure, get some nice deep tones into the image. And then when it comes to colors, personally, I like using the color grading a lot more. But again, if you want to be very specific, you want to get some super unique, very cool tone, then this is where you get it. And it's all about experimentation. Add a few tones. As soon as you understand, here is the highlights, here is the midtones, here's the shadows. If I place a tone here, take it down, I don't only add contrast, I add colors. And Lightroom is telling you what color it is. It is adding the blue, the teal, the opposite of the red, and it's taking it down here. And in the other direction, you can do it as well. Or you want to isolate it. You want to maybe just have the deepest parts of the shadows should be a little bit more red. Then you can do that, because you can get so precise with the tone curves, which is so cool. But again, when you're working with any tone curve, whether you're working with RGB and you want to do some cool things here, this is a photo that I shot just the other day. I want to warm up the shadows a little bit. Maybe I want to cool the highlights just ever so slightly. The trick with any tone curve in the midtones, we can make them a little bit bluer as well. I think this actually looks pretty sick. And then for here, I would like to cool. I think cooling, getting a little colder highlights and then a little more red into the shadows, just ever so slightly. But you can see what I'm doing. I'm being precise. And then if you want to take the greens as well, then you can do that. Just be cautious. Massage them like you're massaging somebody that you care about. Like you're just going in for the kill. Like you're really being deliberate with this tool, because small movements in the tone curves equals big changes to the final image. All right, so now you know how to shape your tones and colors with real precision and real passion. But my friend, the truth is there is still one massive missing piece that almost nobody's talking about. And it's the main reason why some photos look absolutely flat and others have this magical 3D depth to them. And it's not a slider. So my friend, watch this video here next and I'll show you how to get that beautiful